Welcome to the Sweeney Show, Business and Law Podcast. I'm David Sweeney, and joining me here today is Maeve Mullins. Maeve is a genealogist who works with a company called Finders International. Maeve, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you for having me. This is my first podcast experience, so absolutely delighted.
Well, you're very, very welcome, and thank you for making the time. So, a genealogist, what exactly entails that kind of a job?
So a genealogist gathers up records to put together a family tree. So we would access records online. A lot of Irish genealogy can be done online now, gathering up birth records, marriage records, death records, accessing census records, probate records, and there's a whole wide spectrum of records that are available online now. It's being added to all the time. Then sometimes there are records that we need to go to a repository that they're not online, and we need to go to the GRO or the National Archives or the National Library or wherever, Reg of Deeds.
Yeah, it sounds like an interesting and fascinating job. How does one qualify to become a genealogist? What's your own pathway to your current role?
Well, I have had a long and winding road to end up as an Irish genealogist. So I'm from Glaslough, County Monaghan, and after school I went to DCU and did a BSc in computer applications. And part of the course in DCU was work experience, and I did my work experience with Bank of Ireland, and then I actually worked with Bank of Ireland in IT for about 25 years, and then an opportunity came up to change career, to take redundancy and change career. So I'm one of these people who made a change and did a swap, and totally different. So as part of after working in Bank of Ireland, I started working in genealogy part-time, and also did a master's in Irish history in Maynooth part-time. Absolutely loved that. And before I got to the end of that, I got an offer to come work with Finders full-time. So that was in 2015, and I now lead the research team for Finders International in Dublin. There's 9 of us that are based in the Dublin office, or on the Dublin team, and we also have an office in London and an office in Edinburgh, and then agents and researchers worldwide, really, that we would liaise with for specialist research. Yeah.
And what is your client then? Would a lot of your clients be solicitors? Would they just say someone is a probate solicitor? What would be an example of a client and an example case you might take on?
Exactly. So a lot of the work that we do is with Irish solicitors, and I suppose there's 2 main inquiries that we get, 2 main types of cases that solicitors will be working with. Firstly, where the deceased person died testate, so they do have a will, but there are perhaps some of the beneficiaries named in the will are not living at the address that they were listed at when the will was written, or perhaps there was no address given with the beneficiary's name at all, and so we can find and locate those particular people on behalf of the Irish solicitor. The second main inquiry that we would get would be on intestacies or partial intestacies, and in that instance the solicitor may require a full family tree, and quite often a solicitor will be in touch with one family member and perhaps they know about one side of the family. So they might know all about their relations on the paternal side of the family, but they know nothing about the maternal side of the family, or vice versa. So they're the two main inquiries that we would get. There are other instances where we are contacted by Irish solicitors. Couple of examples would be where say a solicitor from Cork last year contacted us. They had a name and address for a beneficiary, but they just couldn't get a reply. And it turned out that there was the address, we'll say, for example, it was something like 133 Main Street, Birmingham. But the beneficiary actually lived at 138 Main Street, Birmingham. So the letters were never going to get a reply, and you know, and it was probably, you know, handwritten in somebody's address book, and the 3 and the 8 got smudged or whatever. So that we were delighted to be able to help with that, because they were nearly there and yet needed assistance with research. Another example was of a solicitor from Sligo who actually contacted us last year, and they had the beneficiary's name and their address, but just couldn't seem to get a reply from them. And family members thought that, yes, that is where they lived, but we have a network of reps in the UK and in Ireland, and they can go and visit a beneficiary if somebody isn't responding. And in that particular case, that poor man was suffering with mental health challenges, and he was not opening his post, and he was not answering the door, and but just the rep happened to bump into the next door neighbour, who said, "Oh, I'll knock on the window and introduce you," and that's how that matter got resolved. You know, so it's great to have in the UK, our reps are retired policemen, usually, or policewomen, and in Ireland, a retired Gardaí. So,
and as part of your role, does that involve actually physically visiting books of records and offices, or how have you adjusted since COVID-19, if that is the case and you can no longer do so?
Yes. So there was a period there where we couldn't access some offices, but thankfully in the last month or 6 weeks or so, most of the repositories that we visit have opened up. You now need to make an appointment, and say, for example, in the GRO, they have asked that one nominated person from a company is the person who always goes to the GRO, you know, to limit exposure of their staff and all of that. So we're actually blessed that we were very well set up at the start of the lockdown, in that we have our IT department had invested very well in our systems. We have an online secure case management system, and everybody could already work from home. We did do a bit of taking in turns, going into the office, collecting loads of stationery and a printer and, you know, bringing it home. But it actually worked out incredibly well. Yeah, we've been able to continue to work the whole time.
Do you think
we're very lucky?
In the last, say, 5 or 10 years, when everybody's gone online and social media, has that made your job easier, or are there still obstacles to find people online?
I suppose it is. It's just another development. And yes, we sometimes do use social media in order to get up-to-date contact details and to make contact. We find that, especially in the US, US beneficiaries are there seems to be so much fraud in the US that US beneficiaries are very skeptical of companies like ourselves. They're even skeptical of Irish solicitors writing to them. They just think it's a scam. But in those instances, we can actually harness social media in order to perhaps get a better handle on the person, and convince them and explain to them that we are a bona fide company, and that this is a genuine and legitimate matter that we want to get in touch with them in relation to. So it can only be a positive thing. It
sounds like there may be like two sides to your role. One is kind of like an investigatory or nearly a detective type role, where you're trying to find or source a beneficiary or a known person, and the other side seems to be the genealogy side. Say if someone wanted to trace their own next of kin or go back their own family line, how does someone actually trace their own family tree?
So I suppose for anybody who wants to start doing their own family history research, I always advise that they speak to as many family members as possible and gather up the family lore of names and dates and places and stories to do with family, and then really I suppose a good idea would be to do an Irish genealogy class. There's several offerings online now. Most secondary schools or VECs around the country offer night classes in Irish genealogy. I actually give a class in Castlelock Community College as well myself. So that can be of great help. The National Library and the National Archives, both of them have a genealogy advice service. So before COVID, you could just walk in and queue up and speak to a member of staff or a member of the genealogy advice team. But now you can still email them, So
it sounds like a really interesting, fascinating job. Do you come across many interesting cases yourself? Is there any you'd like to share?
I absolutely. There's so many cases. I suppose one particularly a great case for us where I suppose it's a good example of where the solicitor was incredibly delighted and relieved that they had contacted us. So it was a Dublin solicitor, and their client had come to them to be the administrator on her uncle's estate. And she said that she had one brother and one sister, and that the rest of her uncles and aunts either had not gotten married, or they had gotten married and didn't have any children. But she wasn't in touch with her brother and sister and wasn't sure of their addresses. And this is why the solicitor was asking us to confirm the addresses of her brother and sister. So as part of our due diligence, we were gathering up birth records, marriage records, and we were finding lots more siblings to the client than just one brother and sister. And when we delved a little bit deeper, we were actually coming across lots of first cousins as well. So I actually went back to the solicitor and I said, do you mind, we were chatting about this and we were a bit perplexed, and I said, it's definitely the same family, same parents' names, same address, like the timeline looks like this is several siblings. Do you mind if I phone your client and just run this past her? And when I did, she said, oh yeah, yes, they are my brothers and sisters, but they didn't visit Uncle Mick in the nursing home, so therefore they are not entitled. So okay, right. So that case actually turned out that there was 26 beneficiaries.
Wow.
And not 3.
Yeah.
So the solicitor was mightily relieved that it was going to be distributed correctly, rather than being a big mistake, shall we say. Another really interesting case that we did was for a solicitor from Limerick, and it was a lady who was a ward of court, and she had no brothers and sisters, and it looked like her mother's her mother's siblings, so the deceased's aunts and uncles, had all passed away and didn't have any children. So it looked like she didn't have any cousins either. So the solicitor was coming to us thinking that they needed to ask us to go back a generation to grandparents and actually to find family. But it turned out that that lady's father had been a widower before he married her mother, and he actually had a family. He had been in the army at the time, and the deceased lady actually had 7 half siblings, and we don't know if she ever knew that she knew all of these half brothers and sisters that she had. But her father had been in the army. He had gotten married in Plymouth and had 2 children there, had a child in his first wife, had 2 children in Plymouth, 1 child in India, 2 children in Wexford, 2 children in Limerick, and then his first wife passed away. Okay. So it seemed like we got in touch with all of those half siblings, they were all deceased, but 2 of them had children, and those children live in Australia and New Zealand today. So they were the beneficiaries to this lady's estate. Wow. So I suppose that's one of the best examples that we have that kind of went all around the world.
From a probate perspective, that not only sounds like an interesting, fascinating role, but it's actually a critical role, the roles you take on.
Yes, I suppose we see that time and time again, because of the due diligence that we perform in our research, it gives an awful lot of comfort and certainty, because T's are crossed and I's are dotted, and our report is very comprehensive. Sometimes on occasion there are people that we cannot find. 99% of the time we can find who we're looking for. But if a particular person cannot be found, or their death record cannot be found, our report details out the due diligence that we have done in searching for this person, and then that enables the solicitor to request a quotation for insurance, for missing beneficiary insurance, or for a comfort policy. So it enables the whole process to be brought to a conclusion.
Could you just explain what that is, missing beneficiary insurance?
So missing beneficiary insurance is an insurance policy that's available from Aviva Insurance. And so say great uncle Patrick Murphy went to America in 1890 and nobody ever heard from him again. And we do all of our research to try and identify that particular Patrick Murphy. And if we cannot definitively say, yes, he died here in New York, or he died there in San Francisco, we detail out all of that due diligence, and then the missing beneficiary insurance policy is on that particular stem. Yeah. So the solicitor can request the insurance policy, and then I suppose it protects the administrator or the executor or executrix of an estate, that if that person or somebody belonging to them does turn up at some point in the future, then the insurance policy will kick in. Comfort policy is slightly different. In that a comfort insurance policy in this instance is for the whole tree and any unknowns that might emerge. So we have researched the tree, and we have identified possibly a known gap. But if there are any unknowns, the comfort policy will cover that eventuality. Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. So if there's any solicitors out there that might be listening, what message would you have for them at the moment?
So our message at the moment is, I suppose, that during lockdown, there were some solicitors that once they had cleared what was on their desk at the start of lockdown, they actually went back to files that they had on their shelves that had gotten stuck. And they were usually stuck because somebody could not be located, or perhaps the probate estate was actually distributed, but a share held back, or two shares held back for people that couldn't be located. And then those solicitors came to us. So we'd love if every solicitor in Ireland had a look at all their old files. And I suppose it's a win-win, because it enables the solicitor to tidy up that file, recoup their own fees, and get the whole thing finished up and sorted out. And good for your head to have files like that tidied up and cleared. Yeah. And the money gone out of the account. The Law Society advise not to be holding on to sums of money like that for clients for extended period of time. Yeah.
Well, Maeve, listen, thank you very much for your first podcast. I must admit, you're a natural. That's been a really interesting and fascinating conversation. If anyone wants to get in contact with you, what are your details? How will they get in touch?
So our website is www.findersinternational.ie. My email address is maeve.mullin@findersinternational.ie, or they can phone us on 01567 6940.
That's great. Listen, Maeve, thank you very much, and we sincerely wish you all the very best in the future.
Super. Thanks very much, David.